Welcome to the Suncoast In-Depth Podcast. I'm Brett Watson. Today, I have joining me my good friend, Pastor Kevin Kiser. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, man. Good to be here.
So, as you know, you've been watching these. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I like it. I really like the concept because, deconstruction just seems so negative to me. And I like the idea of reconstruction because, that's kind of been my thing through my journey is like, okay, where do we go from here? And so this answering a lot of those questions, and I like that.
Yeah, good. Which thumbnail was the best thumbnail on the YouTube channel for this series?
Which thumbnail?
Yeah.
You mean like the picture
Yes.
on the? Oh yeah, definitely Kevin O doing the De Niro. That would probably be the best one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Over 200 views.
Just on the thumbnail alone.
Just on the thumbnail.
Yeah.
All right. So, we're talking about Reconstruction. So we usually start off with the guest telling their story. How did you become an atheist nihilist?
Well, I'm neither of those things, but
Good.
yeah, I was raised in West Virginia in a Baptist environment. It's interesting because when you say Baptist, a lot of people maybe immediately go in their mind to what they think a Baptist is or something like that. Where I was raised in rural West Virginia, Baptist was very different than maybe, like Southern Baptist. A lot of people call me Southern Baptist. I really don't come from a Southern Baptist tradition. Actually, the church was called United Baptist. They're kind of like the same as a Free Will Baptist, if anybody knows what that is.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
although they disagree over one theological point, and so they split.
So they had to split.
Yeah, obviously. But a really small church. Good upbringing, with, I didn't think, much about it, even though as you get older, you start to realize it's kind of violent. All this talk about hell and the preachers yelled a lot and scared you. They literally scared the hell out of you. And so when I was 12, I didn't want to go to hell, so I went up and what I call bent the knee because I watched too much Game of Thrones. So I'll always call it bending the knee. But yeah, I was raised in that environment. As I became older, I got interested in theology, and so I started taking some Bible classes, and then I kind of got hooked up with the fundamentalist Baptists there for a little bit. It's because I didn't know any better.
So United Baptist is not considered fundamentalist?
No. Although they've kind of got some, obviously got conservative theology and stuff like that. But no, it's not really a fundamentalist because it's funny because my mother, who's United Baptist, was very concerned about me going into Independent Baptist or Missionary Baptist because, they were heretics in her mind.
Okay.
And so it just gets all convoluted. And
So the conservative banner's being flown strong in that sense.
Yeah. And they probably...
Everybody else is a heretic.
What was considered heresy in their eyes was probably like if, because they believed that you could lose your salvation or whatever. Then, you get into the more fundamental camps and everything, at least, they got eternal security as a doctrine and stuff like that. Yeah. But later in life, I came to realize that eternal security as a doctrine is kind of not where it's at. The concept of grace is really where it's at. And but it took me a little while to get there because where I came from. But when I was at Liberty University, where I finally went in the mid-'90s, I got a job at a Southern Baptist conference center called Eagle Eyrie Conference Center, in just outside of Lynchburg, Virginia. And while I was the sound guy. And so they had all different kinds of groups come in. And actually the people who run this were the Virginia Baptists, which are considered a very liberal vein of the Southern Baptists.
Like American Baptist?
Kind of like that, although they're still Southern Baptists, but it's just like there's a lot of people don't realize there's actually a liberal
branch of Southern.
Yeah, liberal branch of Southern Baptists, yeah. And it was so Virginia was pretty much run by the Virginia Baptists, which were liberal, but then you had guys like Jerry Falwell from Liberty came in and started this new Southern Baptist branch and everything that was more conservative and stuff. And so it was interesting. I was going to Liberty, but working for the liberals, so I was kind of caught in the middle of all that.
What years were you at Liberty?
95 to 99.
So we were actually classmates.
Probably. We probably knew each other, saw each other and just didn't know each other.
I wasn't there on campus.
Oh, okay.
But
I was there.
I took it. They were the only school really at the time that very few that were doing correspondence studies.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, but I was here in Sarasota.
I was there with my hair parted on the side and voting Republican, doing all the things that a Liberty student's supposed to do,
Yes.
Just don't let the hair touch your collar in the back,
Right, yeah.
Type stuff. But when I was at this conference center, I got exposed to all different kinds of groups, even some non-Christian groups that came in, and of course I got to attend all the conferences because I'm the sound guy, so you got to be there. And of course, there were some very conservative groups that came in as well. But what I quickly learned was I really liked the Lutherans because they drink alcohol. But, but honestly, it really opened my eyes, gave me a real education to God is way bigger than the little Baptist bubble that I'd always seen him in. And it really exposed me to a lot of different thought.
So that was kind of the beginnings of your deconstruction, you would say?
I would say,
or at least a pivotal moment.
I mean, even before that, I always had, I don't know, I've got a little bit of a rebellious nature in me and everything. I've never been the type of guy that just accepts what somebody says. I'm skeptical at heart. Mm-hmm. So I always, when somebody says something to me, even like I'm reading this book about diet and stuff right now. And so when I hear something, even though he might be 100% right, my first reaction is, yeah, come on, because that's just my nature. That's my nature, know. So I've always kind of had that going on, which has gotten me in trouble in some of my Baptist upbringing, and especially when I was at Liberty and stuff, because I just didn't always get with the program. I was always kind of standing off to the side going, I don't know about this, know. And so then when I started getting exposed to different thought, then it opened my mind, and I got just really passionate about it and exploring different things. And so then when I accepted a job here in Sarasota, at a Christian school here, which I'd met the pastor and the administrator. They were really cool. I knew they were more conservative than I was, but I felt like I could still work with them. But then when I got here, though, I've realized that the school was actually very heavily influenced by another church in town that was, your King James only fundamentalists types and all that kind of stuff. But at that school, though, what the advantage was that's where I met Larry Bauckham. And because his kids, all three of his kids were actually students of mine. And so meeting him and Becky at the first parents meeting that I was at, I was just so shell-shocked and what did I get myself into or whatever. And then I met Larry and Becky, and it was like a breath of fresh air. And I remember saying to Larry, I was like, you're the first normal person I've met today. And he says, well, then you're having a bad day. But that was interesting because that was in '98 actually, and so that was the year that he started Suncoast. Yeah. And but we became friends and began talking and everything, and one thing led to another, and that's how I ended up here eventually.
Yeah, cool. So as I've been talking with people, I noticed that the majority, and not just talking with people here, but watching social media sources for people that are deconstructing, reconstructing, I noticed that most of them seem to deconstruct due to relationship reasons, not doctrinal reasons.
Right.
But that's why I like to talk to a pastor, because I like the theology part of it, But,
right.
And you know how Larry uses the analogy of the brick wall. And in fact, it was in the sermon this Sunday. He kind of brought that up. Was it the sermon or was it in staff? It was in staff meeting.
Yeah.
The fireplace. No, that was in the sermon. Anyway, doesn't matter. But the bricks represent different beliefs, right? In the system of belief that you have overall. And when you're going through deconstruction, you're kind of like, you know what? I can't use this brick anymore. It's untenable. And you throw it out. And I would say that, do you agree that seems to happen more with pastors than it does with regular Joes?
Because I think the problem is, even though I went to a very conservative school, you're still taught, even at Liberty, I was still taught other points of view, but then they were quickly dismissed. They would teach it, but then they would quickly dismiss it or whatever. Yeah. And once again, me being of the skeptical mind that I am, when I would hear that stuff, I would go, in my brain, I would hit pause and go, wait a minute, he just skated over this, but this is worth looking into. And I remember one class I took, it was actually a philosophy course I took at Liberty, and I can't remember the professor's name now. He was there, I think, for one semester. because he was very open-minded and just really got me interested in Kierkegaard and stuff like that. And I think I don't know what happened to him, but my guess is he probably got fired for being too liberal or something, But but I loved that class, and then I would go into some of my other classes like Bible classes and stuff, and like I said, they would skirt over some more. Well, there's other viewpoints on this and stuff, but then they would quickly dismiss it. But then I would go back and actually research the other points of view and read some books and stuff that I wasn't supposed to be reading.
I remember back when I was at Holy Cross Lutheran, my Lutheran pastors were kind of shocked and impressed that they even talked about other points of view at Liberty. Yeah. Because my one pastor was my test proctor, So he'd sit in there sometimes when I'm listening to lectures or whatever, Said, oh, well, I actually talked about other points of view. Yeah. I'm impressed. Yeah. So at least they did that. But you're right. They would dismiss them very quickly. Yeah,
like I had an English professor. It still annoys me to this day. But the assignment was to read this short story. I don't remember what the short story was now, but it was to read a short story and then give your impression of what you got from that short story. And I failed. I got an F on the paper because my point of view was wrong. And I'm like, you asked my opinion, and this is my opinion. How can my opinion be wrong? You can say that you disagree with my opinion or whatever, but no, just to give me a failing grade and say, nope, you got it wrong. That's when I knew, they're very set in their beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a story that's a little bit the opposite of that, actually, from Liberty, where I called them, and I hate the phone. I have like a phone phobia. Okay, I hate talking on the phone. Yeah. Don't know what it is, just hate it. But I was like, I have to call them. So I called the school, talked with, it wasn't the prof, if I remember right. It was like his aide or something. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the theology class. And I was taking a test. And I knew the answer that they wanted, but I did not agree with it at all.
Right.
And had to do with eternal security, actually, funny enough. And so the aide said, look, we don't expect you to agree with the prof on everything. Just answer it the way you know is going to be the correct answer, but you don't have to hold that belief. So that was kind of refreshing,
Yeah.
But no question, Ed Hines.
Yeah.
The whole Old Testament survey was him refuting evolution.
Yes. I've had that class. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Same thing, right?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't even remember cracking the book.
Yeah.
Old Testament survey. And I think he wrote it.
Yeah.
But
he did.
It was just all against evolution. So weird. And defending the virgin birth. He had his own little book for that too.
Yeah. There's some big bricks, right?
Yeah. All right. So, what would you say if there is a brick that gets in the way of, or that contributes to deconstruction more than any from your Baptist world? What would you say is the brick that gets in the way the most?
You mean one that I still struggle with, or?
Well, that you think people struggle with.
Oh,
even though most people seem to deconstruct for relational reasons.
Right.
Sometimes, people do look at the belief system, or they look at the belief system and they find it a convenient excuse to, which I still think means that they really didn't believe that.
Right.
But now they can say so because they've deconstructed for relational reasons. But
I'd say from my experience, from where I come from, country Baptist and all that kind of stuff, and then running into other people and stuff. Obviously, the biggest one would be the penal substitution atonement theory.
Okay.
I think people would. I know a lot of my Baptist friends and everything. They would die on that hill. I mean, that's a big one, and the concept of hell, and which always disturbed me. I mean, I love my mom to death. She passed away 12 plus years ago, but but I would have conversations with her all the time. It's like, it's kind of disturbing to me that you guys almost seem like you almost delight in the thought of people going to hell, you
Yes.
know, and that's a little disturbing to me. And I don't think they meant to come across that way, but it does come across that way.
It does.
So, you know,
If for no other reason, because they so vehemently defend it
yeah.
as a reality.
Yeah.
You know?
But I say all the time, and I know you've heard me say this too about my dad, who's a Baptist deacon back in West Virginia, and in the church I grew up in, actually. And he believes that stuff, though, but he lives it out, you know. And so I respect that. I don't agree with it, but I respect it, you know, because at least he lives what he says he believes. Whereas it's been my experience with other pastors and Christians that I've met throughout the years and everything. They hold strong to these beliefs, but they, you know, if I truly believe that people were dying and going to hell and being tortured for all eternity, then I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now, Brett. I'd be out there doing something about it, you know?
Yeah.
So obviously I don't believe that. But my dad, you know, he'll walk right up to you and tell you, you know, that you need to get saved and you need Jesus or else you're going to burn in hell. And he says that not to be a jerk, but because he really believes that.
Yeah. I'm actually writing a blog post right now. I'm in the middle of it on hell because that one comes up. My God, how many years now have I been leading small groups, right? And I'll be willing to bet you've experienced this too. But that topic, probably more than any other topic, comes up again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Hell. People being tortured for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
I laugh whenever Troy, he always says, for a trillion years. And I'm like, yeah, that's just the beginning, dude.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning. It's forever.
Well, that's what got me going to an altar at 12 years old and bawling my eyes out and crying and everything is the description of, you know, after millions and millions of years and it still hasn't even begun. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound pleasant at all, you know? So yeah, I didn't come to Christ because I love him so much, you know, it's just, you know, I'm scared of what he's going to do to me.
Yeah.
You know?
And isn't that a kind of a basic question we should be asking ourselves? Like Richard Rohr puts it this way, how do you love a God like that?
Yeah.
And the question I was going to ask is, right, so shouldn't I come to God out of love? Isn't that probably what God, who is described as love itself, want? And how can a person really completely do that if they're motivated by this terror of being lost forever or burned forever, right? It's just...
Yeah, and what's interesting, though, is early on, and because I was just so in the church culture and everything, it didn't seem off to me because it was just, I was taught that every Sunday, you know, and it was just part of me. But as I got older and started hearing other points of view and people asking legit questions like that and everything, then it began to turn in my mind. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, there's something wrong even with the concept of, you know, God loves you, but he can't love you until you know, come get saved and say the special prayer or whatever. And then the concept of, you know, God loves you so much that he had to murder his own son in order to be able to stand to look at you.
Which, for those who don't know, that's penal substitutionary atonement.
Pretty much in a nutshell, yeah. And so when you start realizing, looking at it from a different perspective and everything, you go, yeah, that's off, you know. It's like being from West Virginia, there's other things, you know, it's like you find out, oh, that's weird. I didn't know that was weird, you know.
Yeah.
But probably almost everybody could say that coming from wherever they come from. But
almost. I was fortunate. I was not raised Christian. I say that's fortunate. I really think it is.
Yeah.
I converted on my own, and I started working in a liberal Lutheran church, even though I went to Liberty for, you know, their stuff, very conservative. I still had the influence of liberal scholars too, and both of my pastors were scholars. And similar to what we have here, they didn't have PhDs, but they were scholarly, you know.
Yeah.
And so I had great conversations, debates with them, and so it did seem weird to me.
Yeah.
I did buy into it for a short while. And I remember a turning point for me was a seminary student from, I think, Chicago Seminary. He was is the brother of one of our one of my volunteers, adult volunteers at the time. I was a youth pastor. And he was, during the summer, he would tour around and he played guitar and sang contemporary Christian stuff and asked if he could stop at our church. We said yes. And afterwards, he and I were talking about seminary. And I asked him, he had said something in his little talk with the kids that leaned universalist. Oh. And so afterwards, when we were talking, I was like, sounded universalist. He said, I am a universalist. I said, then what do you do with passages like the sheep and the goats? It's in Matthew 25, if you want to look it up. And he said, well, I don't know about you, Brett, but I got a lot of goat in me that I'd like to see go away.
Yeah.
And he really got me thinking. He did.
Yeah.
And of course, my pastors were right there with him on any of that. So he wasn't the only influence that way, but here was a young guy my age going to seminary. And so it was a little different, Yeah. So that was a deconstruction moment, you could say, for me.
Yeah. And I talk about, doing these conferences and when, and obviously it was more than just running sound for the conferences. I got to meet the speakers and stuff like that and actually have conversations. Sometimes I would have breakfast or lunch with them and stuff. And so it's just really getting to know people too. And starting to hear these stories of, like I had no idea that there was such thing as different atonement theories and stuff like that, or the concept. I remember the first time I heard the concept of annihilationism, people who believe that, rather than dying going to hell, if you die without Jesus, then you're just burn up and you cease to exist or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I still don't buy into that one. But I remember the first time I heard the theory, it resonated with me. It actually kind of brought me like joy. Yeah. Because I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about people being tortured for all eternity. They just cease to exist. That sounds way better,
it would be way better.
As opposed to the alternative, yeah. So, so you come across people, and of course, Pastor Larry's been very influential in a lot of things, and just being under his leadership and seeing the way that it's not even so much what he says, it's just the way that he lives and the way that he treats people. And I'd never seen that before, because my perspective of other pastors that I'd worked with and stuff was very different than that. So then it just starts to make sense. And then you mentioned the theological versus the relational, part of deconstruction. Well, relational, that happens a lot too, because I used to have this idea in my head that, I wouldn't say it out loud because it just sounds obnoxious, but you just believe, I love Jesus, so nothing bad's going to happen to me, which is just ridiculous, and I knew it was ridiculous, but yet at my core, I'll admit that I kind of believed that,
Or at least wanted to.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, just shit happened,
That's right.
There's not a better word for it, and it's just like, and then, so I spent a lot of time shaking my fist up in the air all of a sudden, and God's evil and God's messing with me and all this stuff and everything and then I come to a place to finally realize that I just had a bad concept of God, and started working through that. And then you have a moment when you find out your daughter's gay and then you have to, kind of really search your heart about all that kind of stuff and everything. So, yeah, so I think that's kind of where, the relationship and the theology and everything, it all kind of meets together,
Sure.
And it becomes real.
Yeah. It's the proximity thing.
Exactly.
With you and your daughter, suddenly you were faced with, I have to judge this situation. Mm-hmm. What do I really think? This is my kid.
Yeah.
None of that changes.
Right.
She's a human being.
Yeah.
None of that changes. Can I really imagine that she's any worse a sinner than anyone else I know?
Yeah.
Of course not.
No.
Proximity makes a huge difference, right? And you mentioned that you got to know the people, the speakers that were coming to the conference center. And so you got to hear their different perspectives, I guess.
Yeah, because it's different than reading a book.
Yeah.
When you get to know somebody, you sit down, you have a conversation with somebody, you see they're just a real human being, just like you. Mm-hmm. And they have flaws, but they also have passions. They have things that they're excited about, and and stuff. And so you get to hear the heart of that maybe doesn't come through when you're reading a book or something sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
I know recently we've been exposed to Brian McLaren around here at Suncoast, and I've had a couple of conversations with him, and it just makes the book different when I read it because
totally.
because I've met the guy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you just actually know something about what a sweetheart the guy is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy.
And I would say, out of all the books that I've read in that kind of genre, he and Rohr do a really good job of showing their heart. But still, even with guys like that, you actually get to meet them, and it really does. It just changes the way you read the book.
Yeah. Of course, the opposite could be true, too. You can meet somebody, and then maybe it wasn't such a great conversation.
Oh, I've had that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. First Hawkins Road. Anyway, won't name names. Yeah. But that whole proximity piece is so important. And I would say it's equally important. See what you think of this. I would say it's equally important to stay in proximity with people if you have any interest in reconstructing something spiritually.
Oh, absolutely. Because, I was a youth pastor for a long time also, and I know one of the things that I used to teach when I was a youth pastor is, you become who you hang out with. And I've thought about that a lot in the last few years, like if that was actually something good to say or not. But I do think it is, just in the sense of, when you're exposed to people, the proximity, and you're exposed to people on a regular basis and stuff, they really begin to shape you more than you realize. And so I think it's important to have a wide variety of friends and influences and stuff like that, because, if you only hang out with people who agree with you all the time, then, then you're not really stretching yourself.
Agreed. Yeah.
But at the same time, you also want to be people that are like-minded, especially want to be around people that are loving and care about people.
And I think that's something there that is of paramount importance, I guess. Because, look, if I don't agree with you politically, but I know your heart, I've witnessed your heart, and you're striving to be the Christ-like version of yourself, who cares?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I mean, you and I share a friend that we won't name right now, but he's very much on a different political side than where we are. But he's one of my favorite people on this planet.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't like his politics, but he's one of my favorite people. I've got another guy that I consider probably one of my best friends. Very much we just stay away from political conversations, because that's polarizing.
Yes.
And I want to be around people that, when you see them, though, you see their heart, and you see the type of person they are, and they're just a good quality person to be around. The type of person I walk away from going, I wish I was more like them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the person that your name didn't name, there are many things that you wish you had that he has, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a good guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do have to say that I enjoy our conversations where we can freely polarize.
Yes. But those are personal conversations.
Oh, we talk a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we talk about this stuff. And I thought that it'd be good to have you in here because I think it's important for people to hear other people's stories. So that's the one thing, but to hear it from someone who has been educated and has not only been educated in one stream of Christian thought, but has been educated, mostly self-education though, right? I mean,
right.
But nevertheless, self-educated in other streams of thought and open to that. So would you say at this point in your journey with Christ that you love God, you appreciate God more now than you did when maybe you were seen as a more zealous Christian, the way people put it?
Yes, but it looks really different. I'm not sure I know how to put the words to that, but before, I loved God so much, but so much of my love for God was just expressed in what I was told to do. the way to pray, the way to worship, the way to read your Bible, the way to live your life, all these kinds of things. And I was expressing my love to God out of all these, what I thought was expressing my love, and I was really just expressing my religiousness. Now I would say not that I don't do any of those things, but I don't feel the pressure to,
Yeah.
And I just I find God more loving and more accepting and more. I don't have to worry about people who have a different opinion or following a different path than me. Whereas before, I was just concerned about their eternal souls,
Yeah.
and now I can see them for the individuals they are, and I've learned from them, and it's really fun meeting people that are different than me.
Yeah, it is.
Because it can get a little boring. Just, I consider myself a pretty boring person. So if everybody's like me, then it's not going to be too exciting.
Well, you have to be with you all the time. So
I know, right? My poor wife, right? But but getting to actually know people and hear other points of view. I have some Buddhist friends and stuff like that, and it's very interesting hearing some of the things that they think, and actually being able to have the kind of relationship with them. I can kind of make fun of some stuff that they believe, it's like, wow, I thought Jesus was hardcore, but Buddha's like, on some points,
On some points, yeah.
Like we had this friend, for example, she had to fast in order to go to temple, And I was like, well, what are you fasting? And she says, well, this month I'm fasting coffee. Next month I'm fasting alcohol.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you really should come to Suncoast. And she goes, why is that? And I was like, we'll give you a cup of coffee and then I'll go out and get a drink with you later. It's like, and she says, you almost converted me just right then, but it's fun, just being able to, lighten up and just enjoy people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy life, enjoy people.
Exactly.
That's well put. Yeah. I've often said, I think I mentioned this in staff too, that, when I talk to people about Suncoast, I've worked for 1, 2, 3, 4 in really 4 different streams of Christianity. 5 different streams. Okay. Mm-hmm. And all those places where I served were great for their own reasons, for sure. And I don't mean to take anything away from them, but what I always end up telling people is I've never worked in a community where it was more of a Christ-like environment than it is here at Suncoast.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that I think anyway, is that it's just so inclusive, right? And that's what you see in Jesus, is this radical inclusivity.
Yeah.
And while I worked for mainline churches, I worked in the United Methodist, and it was an open environment. It was. I worked for Anglican. I worked for Reformed Church in America. I worked in the Anglican church I was in had a mix of Anglo-Catholic, like really just Roman Catholic, and Protestant, more liberal Protestant. So it's not like I wasn't in environments that were open. They were. And I think that's important for people to hear, for people that, sit in our class or watch these videos. When I say that it's more Christ-like, I'm not really comparing Suncoast to fundamentalist congregations.
Right.
I did work for an evangelical church, but I'm comparing it with very open, inclusive, but denominational churches. So it wasn't quite as inclusive. Right? Because we're right and they're wrong still. Not necessarily going to burn in hell forever wrong, but they just don't know. That was kind of the attitude, no matter where I was. It was, but here it's not like that. It really isn't.
No.
When I talk to you, we're sitting in my office and we're just chatting and this kind of stuff comes up. I know that if there's any poking fun at, our past associations with things, there's also an air of respect for them as well. And I know that's true with Larry. I know that's true with Troy, that when you talk to people here, Ricardo, they do not look at differences of opinion as a reason for dismissing a person.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not at all.
And I learned a lot from my upbringing, and I'm thankful for my upbringing in church. Although my wife was not raised in church. Her parents started going to church when she was in her teen years. And so even early on in their marriage, that caused a lot of uncomfortable conversations and stuff, But I learned so much from even some of the wrong things I learned from. And I would also just like to add that, when we talk about these things, and me holding the beliefs that I have and where I'm at through my deconstruction and now trying to reconstruct, and I use the word trying, and all these things.
That's
it's
very honest.
I don't come across these things flippantly. It might sound that way sometimes when, you just talk about it or whatever. But I mean, I seriously wrestle with these things and still do. Mm-hmm. Because these are important things that we're talking about, and you don't want to be wrong, type thing. And so, it's I joke about, but it's really no joke. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweats and go, I'm going to hell, and, but, sometimes I really do that, it's like, but it's
do you
just
really?
This,
Actually, you wake up and you're like,
it's this fear of being wrong, and it's like, what if I'm wrong about this and everything? But I don't think I am. I mean, because, obviously, like I said, God is a loving God. And I think, I just don't think he's angry at me. But, when you're raised with these things and everything, I guess I don't want to use the brainwashing word, but I think maybe there's just a little bit, it's really
neural pathways are a thing, man.
Yeah.
They are.
And so sometimes it's just a little hard to let go of these things. Mm-hmm. But that's why I talk about an experience I had. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I think it was one of our encores that we had here at Suncoast. And I was standing there during the worship time, and I just had this emotional moment. I just started crying, and I've had those kinds of experiences before where, maybe I just confess some sins or, let go of some stuff that I've been worried about, and it's just letting go of, and have those kind of experiences. But this experience was different because I started letting go of theology. I started letting go of doctrines and beliefs. And I just felt like it was this just heavy bag or load that I've been carrying on my back for years, trying to live up to this ideal that I thought I was supposed to be. And it just felt so good to let go of all that.
Yeah.
And just realize that God just loves me. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those kind of mystical experiences are important.
Yeah.
And at least it is for a lot of Christians. They have been for me. And I feel like they're important to me because they, you can't deny your experience, right?
Right.
And there's plenty of things. I mean, almost every single thing we would profess, it's not like we were there, so we can't prove it, right?
Right.
So it's not really about that, is it? It's about, no, well, even if all that ended up not being true, maybe Jesus never existed. That's absurd. But
right.
Let's say somebody proved that was true. It still wouldn't change the fact that I had these weird, what could you call them? Alternate conscious moments mm-hmm. with something way bigger than me and all consuming, and sometimes it happens in worship. Sometimes it happens just in a prayer time or a meditation or something. But
I've just had experiences that can only be explained with God, and it's like, I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but it makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point, is it makes sense to me. And so that's why I always say is like, hey, we can sit around, we can talk about these, atonement theories and all that kind of stuff. I really grow very bored and tired of that very quickly, because I just know that God is real, and I know that God loves me. And there's some specifics that maybe someday we'll have it all figured out. But right now, it's just God loves me is enough.
I don't know why I like to talk about that stuff. I mean, most of the pastors I know would agree with you. It's just boring. Why are we talking about this? But I love talking about this. I don't know why. But I agree that what matters at the end of the day is, this experience of relationship with the God of love.
Yes.
So I've closed some of these, and I'd like to do that with you by asking this question. You see a lot of people deconstructing, like if you're watching TikTok or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they should, kind of coined this phrase, throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater, right?
Yes.
And they're bitter, they're angry. And I always picture this person in that brick wall that's all deconstructed, right? And covered in ash. They're miserable. They feel isolated. They're experiencing grief, loss, and so on. And I've known people personally that have been in that place for too long. And
yes.
So what, if there's one thing that you would want to leave them with that you feel like would help them to get past that part of the journey, what would it be?
A simple answer would be, hey, it's okay. It's just okay. But a more detailed answer would be, it's okay because I feel like most people that I talk to that are in that situation, and I've been there too, so, and I still fall back into it every now and then, but the biggest thing is just to remember that you have to separate your experiences with people and the church from God. And I know that can be very difficult for a lot of people. And they say, well, how can you even do that? But you really can.
You really can, yes.
And so that would be, I would
and
say.
Should.
Yeah.
I don't usually throw should out very often, but
yeah,
that's one thing a person should do.
Well, if you can discover the God of love, you can discover that God loves you no matter what. And that what we teach here at Suncoast every week, I hear, Larry and Troy both just reiterating the words that God loves you and God has always been with you. And it's just a matter of really of awareness, of awakening of the Spirit of God within you. And that message is preached a lot here. I would say every week I hear that at Suncoast, and I love that we're just really trying to get people to understand that point. And I think that is the genesis of Reconstruction right there. It's just realizing that point. That, there's maybe been some bad stuff that went down, in your religious past, and now you're traumatized by all the things that you thought were real, and you feel lied to, because that's the way I felt. I just felt lied to, and all this kind of stuff. But if you can really get to the place where you can let go of that, even if I was the person who did it to you, because, as I've said things in the past that I go, oh, I cringe now, I wish I hadn't said that, but most people out there are doing the best with what they know.
Right.
And they're not trying to harm you. And the church is not trying to harm you. Even your traditional mainline fundamentalist church, for the most part, I don't think they're trying to harm you. They're doing what they think is right.
With what they have.
With what they have. And so maybe, as much as you want people to give you a break, maybe give them a break also. But then also just get in touch with the God who loves you, who resides in you. Be aware of his presence and separate all that religiousness from who God is, and you can begin to find healing, and you don't have to be angry and bitter.
And you can do that. I mean, you really can.
Yeah.
Like what is there to lose, I feel like, with so many people in that position? By the way, that was really well said. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to add to it or anything.
Oh, no.
But the way to experience God can be manifold, right? There are many, many, many ways to experience God, and it's not although it does include experiencing God through your relationships, and maybe some of those relationships were hurtful. It's not exclusive to that.
Right.
And there are other ways, and maybe it is time for a little bit of solitude with God.
Yes.
And you can do that in meditation. You can do that on nature walks, whatever. There's many, many ways to do that.
I'm a big nature guy. I see God in nature. I just love it.
Yeah. And then maybe from there you can build on that love relationship and get back with people.
Yes.
So I appreciate you talking with me.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good.